Hello and welcome to the Escape Podcast, your source for all good things in Universal movies. I'm Josh.
And I'm Dave. Join us as we explore the vast reaches of science fiction, fantasy, action-adventure, and beyond. Today on episode 6, we're going to be talking about 1987 science fiction action horror film called Predator. Starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers.
Wait a minute. You're not Dave.
I'm not?
No. Who are you?
Oh, I'm John.
Who?
John, your best friend since second grade.
Who?
We've worked together at the same job for 12 years.
I don't think I've ever seen you before in my life.
I was the best man at your wedding.
What? Who?
You just mentioned me on your podcast like 3 episodes ago, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh! Yes, John.
Right.
What are you doing here?
I don't know, but I'm happy to be here.
Oh.
Sorry about the whole Dave bit. I just got caught up in the introduction.
Oh, that's fine.
Hope you don't mind the, me being around.
No, not at all. So, John, it's nice to have you here.
Thanks, buddy. Pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of the show.
Oh, do go on. So, what are we talking about?
Well, we are going to be talking about Predator here a little bit later on. But if I'm not mistaken, don't we usually talk a little bit about maybe things we've seen or kind of been up on lately in the movie world?
You are not mistaken. What do you have to talk to me about?
Well, personally, I've kind of been interested in this show, Westworld. It's in its first season on HBO, and it's based off of the movie, I think it was from the 1970s, by the same title. Now, I've never seen the movie from the 70s, so I can't compare it to that in any way or respect. But the show is absolutely phenomenal. It's got an all-star cast, including Anthony Hopkins, and it's a very futuristic world, but it's also very old school. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything for maybe somebody who's just now finding out about it or whatever. But the way it meshes the old and the new together, and also the plot twist is very fascinating. If you're into like a sci-fi, mystery, western, but yet futuristic, it's really good.
I know it's a Michael Crichton novel.
Yeah, he was the guy that did Jurassic Park.
And I know that Yul Brynner was in I believe it came out in 1973. That's about all I know about it.
Yeah, basically there was this character, he was probably the most well-known character from the original movie, and he was known as the Man in Black.
Okay.
And
that reminds me of, do you know anything about The Dark Tower?
No, I'm not very familiar.
Okay, anyway, sorry, continue.
No, that's all right. But anyway, the Man in Black in the original movie was played by Yul Brynner. In this, however, he's played by Ed Harris.
Okay.
He was in The Rock.
Right.
He was the villain in The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, basically, without giving too much away, there's a futuristic real world, and then there's a theme park that is life. It's larger than life, so to speak, and it's made to be like the Old West. Go ahead.
It reminds me. I mean, I knew a little bit about that much at least, but it reminds me a little bit of Assassin's Creed.
Okay.
The way basically somebody can be. I mean, they're in. I don't know if it's like modern day or the not too distant future, but basically how somebody can have this go in, like in their head, so to speak, be back in the 16th century or whatever. But
Sure.
This is like a holodeck, more like I'm guessing.
Well,
right?
it's not even a holodeck. It's all robots. Everything's animated.
Okay.
But the robots are so realistic that they're called hosts and guests. The robots are the hosts because they're the ones that are there for the entertainment of the visitors, and then obviously the visitors are the guests. The hosts are supposed to be so realistic that they can't be told apart from a real human being, a flesh and blood person. And it's all worked out very well for years, but they've continued to make technological improvements on these things, and it almost seems like maybe they make them a little too good.
Okay.
And a little bit of a mystery starts coming on board as far as what's going on, why certain things are not working out the way that they were originally intended to. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail because there's a lot of storyline that gets covered even in just the first few episodes. The season, I think, is going to wrap up really soon. So again, I don't want to spoil too much, but it's absolutely fantastic.
All right.
How about you, man? What have you been into?
Not much. I mean, this isn't really super noteworthy. You know, I was going back and watching the original Battlestar Galactica, the 1978 version, because I'd never seen it before. But what I more want to talk about is the new Kong movie, Kong Skull Island.
I think it looks great.
See, I grew up on that. My uncle Dave, he rented it for me, the original 1933 version. So I remember when the 2005 version came out, I was quite looking forward to it. And obviously I'm also familiar with the 76 version, which this one seems to take some cues from that. Just the fact that it takes place in the 70s. He walks upright like a man. He's much larger. Things like that. I saw the trailer. I don't know what to think of it yet. Like, I'm not saying I'm like not looking forward to it, but it didn't like super grab me, but it didn't turn me away from it either. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I just have to wait and see where it goes. I know they're definitely trying to build it up to have it cross over with the new Godzilla series, which would make sense why they have to have him walk upright like a man to be more of a comparable size. But I don't know. I mean, it's something I'm definitely going to keep my eye on.
I think it looks really good. I like the all-star cast that they've got, with John Goodman being in there, John C. Reilly, just a ton of stars.
Sam Jackson's in it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an all-star cast, really.
And Tom Hiddleston and that Brie Larson. She's about to become Captain Marvel.
Is she?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't it fascinating too to think they've got a lot of big stars from not just the modern day, but also from an older era, you know, back in the 90s. So yeah, I think it's going to be really good. The effects that I've seen on it look really good from the trailer and everything. I enjoyed the first trailer more than the longer later trailer that came out. I thought that the first trailer was very well done. It was very suspenseful while still giving you a little taste of what might be coming.
Yeah.
I almost thought they might have gave a little too much away in the longer trailer. But who knows? I mean, you really aren't going to know until you actually go see the movie.
I noticed, well, the first trailer shows a Triceratops skull, because there's a guy like sitting on it shooting. Did you notice that there was no dinosaurs in the second trailer?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, technically there's no dinosaurs in the trailer. They show like what he called the skull crawlers, which were something just made up for this movie. There was something that looked like a tree. Did you see that one part where there was something that, I don't know if it was camouflaging as a tree or if it was, I don't know, it was like, looked like a tree was rising up, like it was some kind of animal, but it kind of
I almost remember something like that. Yeah.
And then there was like, what was that thing, like not an ox, but like a big beast of burden. Remember, they were in the water, but yeah.
It was a great. I mean, it was a great trailer. Again, I just hope that they didn't give away too much, because I think sometimes trailers tend to do that.
Yeah.
So hopefully they've got more in the gas tank there to surprise us with.
Yeah.
Real quick, if you don't mind, I'd also just like to throw out a little plug for a friend.
Okay.
A buddy of mine and yours, we actually went to school with him. He recently was out in Hollywood, and he came back to our area here in the Metro Detroit area, and he made a little movie called The King. And it's not sci-fi, fantasy, or anything like that, but it is a really nice movie for a low-budget production. Mm-hmm. And it was just a really fun thing for him to do, because he did it in places that were familiar to us and people that kind of know this area, not just the downriver area, but the Metro Detroit area in general.
Did he shoot Detroit off?
I don't know if he actually shot in the city, but I mean everything is in this southeastern Michigan area. Okay. And without giving anything away, no spoilers, but it is a kind of like a coming of age story. A young man gets his first car, and he goes out for a night of partying with his friends that turns into just absolute disaster. They come very close to losing their lives, but in the end, it's kind of like about learning life lessons, even though it's in a really harsh manner.
Okay.
So it's available online. I can't remember the name of the website or whatever, but if you search The King online, on IMDb, as a matter of fact, it can be found. And it was made in 2015, I think, 2014 or 2015. Take a look at it, and from there you can probably find out how to get a hold of it. It's really good.
Okay. So,
Predator,
1987. I will start off with some trivia, if I may.
Absolutely. Love trivia.
All right, so Predator, 1987, currently holds a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by John McTiernan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's about as good as I could do it.
Okay, he is known for Die Hard with a Vengeance, and The Hunt for Red October.
All excellent movies.
Yeah. Starring, obviously, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator, Conan, True Lies, The Running Man, Carl Weathers from the Rocky series, Happy Gilmore, and he was in a few others, Action Jackson, and some others. Okay, so Jesse Ventura was apparently ecstatic when he found out from the wardrobe department that his arms were 1 inch bigger than Arnold's. He suggested to Arnold that they measure arms, and with the winner getting a bottle of champagne. Ventura lost because Schwarzenegger apparently told the wardrobe department to let Ventura think that his were bigger. The line "stick around" was improvised by Arnold. When he throws the knife.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Apparently, Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally cast to play the Predator, but he was dropped for being too short at 5'9", with Schwarzenegger, most of his guys being around 6'2" to 6'5". There's a rumor that he didn't want to do it because apparently he wanted his face to be out there. He didn't like doing a role where people didn't get to see him. Kevin Peter Hall, the actor who played Predator, is 7'2", and he can be seen at the end of the movie as the helicopter pilot.
Yep.
Okay. The minigun that Ventura uses had to be slowed down on film as to be seen. It was moving too fast. I thought that was kind of interesting. There was an attempt made to get the shots of the Predator swinging in the trees to get a monkey in a suit to do that, but it didn't work out. Some of the actors got up as early as 3 a.m. to do workouts before they shot. This is Jesse Ventura's first film.
Yes, it is. Do you mind if I interject real quick?
I do not.
You know this, but nobody else does that's listening. I'm a pro wrestling nerd, and so Jesse Ventura is somebody I'm pretty familiar with because that's where he kind of got his start. Really, that's where he would have learned the craft of acting is in the pro wrestling realm. And I just think that's kind of cool that's his first movie. He did good, he didn't have a ton of lines, but I thought he did well. Mm-hmm. And actually, one of those lines is quite well known, at least I think it is. I ain't got time to bleed, you know. So, I thought Jesse Ventura did well. Also, real quick, Jesse and Arnold being in the same movie together is two people who would later go on to be governors of states. Mm-hmm. Arnold in California and Jesse in Minnesota. And also, both men would wind up becoming members of the WWE Hall of Fame.
Okay. Well, I know this next guy apparently tried to run for office, but he didn't win, and that is Sonny Landham?
Landis? Is that oh yeah, Landham.
Okay. Yep. That's Billy.
Yep.
He apparently, the studio insurance company would not agree for production unless a bodyguard was hired for him, because he apparently had such a temper that he would sometimes lash out at people. It wasn't so much to protect him from other people, it was to protect other people from him.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
What a liability.
Yeah. The original title for the movie was Hunter. The Predator's blood was supposed to be orange originally. I thought that was kind of interesting. I think green was a little more interesting. I'm glad they didn't do red.
I like the green, and also I'm not sure if you're aware of how they did that, but they used glow sticks
And KY.
and KY jelly.
Yep. The machete that Arnold throws weighed 20 pounds.
Wow.
And apparently it was thrown so that Schwarzenegger wouldn't have to carry it the whole film. They have it on him. The actors learned real military maneuvers and hand signals to prepare them. I said that one already about him. And every member has different camouflage marks. Apparently Arnold's are fatter to show that he's the leader. They're bolder, they're heavier. Shane Black, who was the guy in glasses, he apparently went on to write and direct several movies, including Iron Man 3, Lethal Weapon 1 and 2, The Last Boy Scout, and he's supposed to be directing the upcoming The Predator in 2018, which is rumored to have Schwarzenegger return as Dutch.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about that. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of information right now.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think it's great to see that the possibility exists of doing a direct sequel and seeing that character come back. It would be very fascinating to see how they work that out into a story. If it's just a cameo, I understand.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if they could actually work Dutch somehow back into the story and make him a main character, that might be interesting, too.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is the watch that Schwarzenegger wore, apparently he has worn that type of watch in several movies, and it's kind of unofficially known as the Schwarzenegger watch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Yeah. So that's all I have for trivia.
Nice.
So
I'd also like to throw out there that Peter Cullen makes a voice a voice appearance as the Predator. Now, Peter Cullen's a very well-known voice actor. If I'm not mistaken, he's the guy who does Optimus Prime in the Transformer stuff.
Okay.
And also, he did the roar of King Kong in the 1976 remake. Okay. Also, another thing I'd like to mention is, the military aspect of this movie. A couple of the guys that were in the movie were veterans of the United States military. Mm-hmm. I know two of them were at least. The one I'm not sure which one it was, but the one I know for sure was Jesse Ventura.
Okay.
And he was actually a member of what is now known as the Navy SEALs, but before it was the Navy SEALs, it was called like the Underwater Demolition Team.
Okay.
And he was a part of that. So that was I'm sure that was no doubt a help for him to already have that military experience to sort of know what was up on that end.
Oh, I can mention one more piece of trivia. Apparently, at the beginning of the film, do you remember when the helicopter first lands and all the guys start getting out and Schwarzenegger hangs out for like half a second longer and he lights his cigar?
Yeah.
Apparently, there was some kind of issue about lighting a cigar inside a helicopter.
Oh, really?
So it had to be done optically. Yeah, after the fact. What? What?
Man, that stinks.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. John just ripped a tootie out his booty. Ooh, that does stink, John. Dang.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay. All right.
So,
Go ahead.
I didn't know that. But I was also going to say that the jungle where they filmed, the other guy, man, I wish I could remember right offhand who the other guy was that was in the military. But he said that when they got into that jungle and they were shooting these scenes, he said it was like deja vu from being back in Vietnam.
I was reading about how apparently it was not a pleasant experience. There were scorpions and leeches, that the water smelled terrible. A lot of the guys got sick because they were in Mexico and, water and stuff, food isn't good.
They said that Arnold, he refused to drink very much and eat very much, and that
He lost a lot of weight.
And
yeah.
you can actually see it as you watch the movie. If you're paying attention, you can actually see him get thinner.
Yeah. I heard the water he had to jump in at that one scene just smelled terrible.
It was absolutely rank.
They said it was not a good experience. So, Schwarzenegger's acting. Now, if you ever watch Conan, the Conan movies, I mean, his acting's pretty bad. And I'm not saying Arnold has become a great actor, but I can see a vast improvement of how he delivers his lines in more modern movies, and it seems like this is still right on the cusp of not as great. Like, I don't know, it sounds like, especially when he first meets up with Dylan again, Carl Weathers at the beginning, Like it just, I don't know,
it doesn't sound natural.
Exactly. There it is. Perfect. I
It
couldn't think
sounds
of that.
rehearsed.
Yeah, it's just not that great yet, but it is what it is. I mean, you're the Arnold's there to be a huge guy, blowing stuff up and throwing guys around, and that's what he's for. I mean, I'm not expecting Oscar material from him, but his accent is still. I mean, maybe it's not even the accent. Maybe it's just he's not. He wasn't as good at English.
Yeah, his delivery just doesn't seem to cut it as far as being a very natural delivery, a natural flow of speaking.
Yeah.
And I'll say this: one of the things I love about this movie is how they were able to do so much by, in some ways, doing so little.
Okay.
They didn't need to talk a lot.
Oh well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I watched it again, and I can see how the hand signals they use. They used a lot of hand signals to talk to each other, and it really shows how much homework they did to study it and train these guys in it, because it seems very authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too is the situations that they're in, being in the jungle. Everything that's around them is alive and crawling and possibly deadly. Mm-hmm. And then they have this objective where they have a good feeling that there's probably going to be hostiles involved, and so they might actually have human beings to contend with as being threats to their physical bodies. Yeah. And then also, they don't know it right at the start, but you have a good idea that there's something even more than that out there. That tells the story throughout the movie. Yeah. So much of the movie is camera angles and work and watching them as they're, stealthily walking through the jungle, and they're looking back and forth and looking up and down, and it uses everything else besides dialogue, besides maybe cheesy situations even, to actually just tell the story very well.
Yeah, I noticed when they were raiding that little village at the beginning, some shots it would show them coming in, it was like a camera down from the ceiling looking at it, and then when Schwarzenegger kicks open that door, you see it from the inside. I just they place the camera in different angles, or at least something I'm not familiar with. But what were we just talking about regarding how they have to figure out stuff. We are kind of figuring, as the audience, you're figuring out stuff, but it's interesting how they, are thinking, oh, there must be 2 or 3 guys out there doing this, picking us off, as they have to figure out, no, it's not 3 guys, it's 1 guy. Oh, it's not even 1 guy, it's something else. It's not a man, just how they have to learn as they go, and how we have to watch them figure it out. And I like the way they kept the Predator a secret. You do see the ship at the beginning, fly and drop him off, but they keep him, they show just little by little. At first you don't even see what, I remember when they first show him pick up that dead scorpion, and you see his hand, and you see it's clawed, and it's oh, you're getting little glimpses of him, and then you finally see him camouflage, and you just kind of get a slight outlet, but you don't outline of his body, but you're not really getting real solid idea of what he looks like. And then real quick glimpses of the camouflage down, then now you're seeing him with the mask, then finally he takes off the mask. So I like that you kind of keep us in the dark, keep us wondering.
Another thing I really like too is they didn't add in a bunch of cheesy baloney to get down to the meat of the story. And what I mean by that is, I just watched this, again. I've seen it before years ago, mm-hmm. and several times over the years. But just to be fresh for this, mm-hmm. I watched it this week. And when I was watching it, it was a lot of new. It was really a lot new to me. Yeah. Because it had been so long since I'd seen it. And as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, okay, I remember something about, the CIA sends them on this mission, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh, I have a feeling, it's going to be the type of thing where the CIA's lured them into a trap. They know about the Predator, but it turns out that's not even the case at all. But that does seem like a cheesy movie storyline that they would probably use nowadays in some sort of situation. They know
there's some creature out there, let's get these guys out there.
We made up this phony story about there being some big shot diplomat out there stuck in the jungle, and we need you to go save them. But in
Yeah.
reality, we just luring your guys out there to get slaughtered by this thing, whatever it is.
Did you notice that once Dutch Schwarzenegger figures out what's going on, he actually says like something, "We're not expendable," or "Oh, you're doing this because we're expendable," and then later, "My men are not expendable." It's just funny because later there was the Expendables, which Arnold was in, and it's kind of interesting.
That is pretty interesting. And what was interesting to just go back to what I was saying real quick. Then it turns out that there actually was kind of a cheesy. Well, it wasn't cheesy. There was a bit of an underlying reason for the CIA sending them, but it still had nothing to do with the Predator.
Yeah, the CIA had no idea that there was this thing out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I like the way they did a nice slow build-up of the guys getting picked off. You know, nowadays it would have to be this huge, fast-moving action scene of these guys getting slaughtered, and here it's very slow, but I don't mean that bad. Like, I don't know, it just seems like it just takes its time correctly. Like, it does it the right way, and I don't know, it seems more suspenseful that way, like, as opposed to, like, him dropping down in the middle and just, like, slaughtering them like nobody's business, you know? I don't know, I think a lot of movies today, they just don't know how to take their time on some things, but then again, I think it's the audience nowadays. We're used to flashy, you know, stuff. You know, it has to be bigger and faster and, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem with movies today, but then again, in some ways, I feel like that's just a problem with society in general. Everything's got to be flashy, got to catch your attention constantly.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to think anymore.
And I'm not saying, because I know I said this before, and people are probably going to think this guy doesn't like modern movies, and that's not it at all. I just appreciate certain movies that can take their time and tell a good story, and sometimes it still happens in modern movies. Some modern movies will do that kind of thing where they'll take their time, tell the story. You know, but again, sometimes fast and flashy is fun and good. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but sometimes it just gets old and it's refreshing to see something a little more, you know, takes its time and does it right.
Well, another thing that's impressive about the fact that it's not fast and flashy is that it actually was made and put out in an era when so much was fast and flashy.
That's a good point.
The 1980s.
Yeah.
The late 1980s especially. And
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up too. That was also an era in sci-fi and in horror where there was so much ridiculousness when it would come to gore and the way people would get killed in some of these movies. And this movie, I mean, obviously, you know, the idea of the Predator it himself is somewhat far-fetched in some sense. But at the same time, if the Predator could exist, the way that happened, it all seemed pretty realistic.
Yeah, I mean, keeping it as grounded as possible in a far-fetched, you know, outrageous story, you know, that's what, not to always bring up Star Trek, but sometimes it can, this has been Star Trek's pro and con, is just like having things sound as grounded in reality as possible, you know, explaining how something works so it doesn't just sound like some magical device that does something. And they did it here, like how this thing, this Predator does stuff, you know, it's not just, it kind of makes it make as much sense as possible again in that situation.
I will say that I still can't imagine how in the world he could totally skin a human being that quickly.
I don't know.
But I mean, even that, I mean, was so it was gory.
He's good at it. He has a lot of practice, I guess.
That's for sure. Well, yeah, that's what he does for a life in the universe.
Yeah, he was in the Predator Scouts as a kid, and he got his merit badge for that, for skinning.
Oh, no doubt. And instead of it being gold for the best, it was blood red.
Yeah.
But seriously, you know, even though that's gory, it wasn't so over the top.
Yeah,
with the
some
gore.
things they show in the distance, like when he rips that guy's spine out. Like, yeah, your Freddys, your Jasons, your Halloweens, they would have been very graphic with it. And yeah,
And
there's
up in
blood
your
and stuff.
face.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. So,
but I appreciate that they didn't do that.
No, for
because
sure.
it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I was even thinking about if you I'm sorry to belabor this,
yeah.
but when they killed Ventura,
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was Ventura, and he blows that hole right through him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember at first, as I rewatched this, I thought to myself, it seems like maybe there ought to be a little bit more gore there, but then I thought, man, the heat and the intensity of that blast probably cauterized the whole inside of him that as it went through him to where there's no reason for all the blood and stuff. It was already cauterized from the heat of this, out of this world weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
Something that, we don't have that technology in our realm, but obviously he does.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're right. I want to talk about the trust they show with the guys, how they trust one another. I like that, for instance, they were trying to be stealth, but when when Ventura gets killed and Mac decides to start shooting, they don't say, there's no trying to, what are you doing? They just trust that he had a good reason, and they just start all shooting. You remember that part where he's shooting off in the distance, and once his gun empties, he picks up the minigun, and he just keeps going with that, and then they all join him.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just like the way they kind of built that little stuff. They didn't have to go into a huge backstory, but you get to see it. And by the way, I think that scene where they're all just shooting off into just that direction is maybe one of the best scenes of the movie. I don't know. It's I don't know. I think it was a cool scene.
I think it's pretty cool, and I think to the same point of the trust and that same type of a situation, but not nearly as intense. Not nearly as intense as far as bullets flying, but is when Billy senses that there's something out there,
mm-hmm.
and he walks ahead, and he's just standing there and staring, and it just seems to go on maybe a little longer than a modern movie would allow.
Mm-hmm.
But that they gave it probably just the right amount of time, and then all of a sudden, after they trusted him that something was out there, but they weren't exactly sure what was going on. Finally, Dutch goes out there. Arnold, he goes out there, and he says, what's going on, Billy? And he's like, there's something out there, and it's. I think he even said something along the lines of it's hunting us, you know. And I thought that was a really great moment in the movie too, on a different level.
Yeah.
Still highly intense, but not in the same way that the moment that you mentioned was intense.
Well, yeah. I mean, just like I said, they just show how these guys, they trust, they rely on each other. It's a small group of, I think there's only supposed to be 6 of them. That's excluding Carl Weathers' character because he's not really technically part of the group, even though him and Dutch have history. But yeah, they just trust and rely on each other. And I think even though they didn't go into this big thing like talking about. There was little moments where they would mention something, that they were in, like some conflict or some country that they were in where they experienced something, but not big stuff. But there was just little stuff that let you know these guys served together a long time. They trust each other. I just thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, they were definitely a cohesive unit.
Yeah.
They moved as one. It was almost like they had the exact same brain.
Yeah. Do you remember the part where Schwarzenegger? It was just before they raid that little village. So if you watch, it's cool. He takes his gun, and there's the other guy's right behind him. He takes his gun. He just hands it up without looking. The guy knows to take the gun from him and gives him his binoculars. And then Schwarzenegger crawls down to look. And then when he gives a signal, I just thought it was cool because you see all of them just do the same thing, just like magic. They just knew what to do. They just came right down and met, and then he just started coordinating them. I just like the way they did all that kind of stuff.
That's an interesting concept too. The that alternative communication form. Mm-hmm. Obviously they had to practice that and train that.
Yeah.
and drill on that. I mean, not just as actors, to get the scene right, but you imagine as characters in the story that those characters had practiced that, had drilled on it, and had probably performed every one of those maneuvers dozens of, if not, 100 times in various situations around the world.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you think about the way, to us, it's foreign to watch other creatures like a pack of wolves or a flock of birds or a bunch of ants all doing what they do.
Yeah.
But yet they have their own form of communication.
Yeah.
And it's not for me to understand. It's not for you to understand. And that's kind of like what was going on with Carl Weathers' character in the movie. He doesn't necessarily know what all's going on sometimes either between these guys. And sometimes they had to do what they normally didn't do, which was fill him in on a verbal level.
Yeah.
That's just another thought that I had about that whole communication business.
Yeah. So, okay. Do you remember when the pig or the boar, it attacks, but I think he thinks it's the predator at the time, but he's stabbing it. And in that time, you realize that the girl did not run away.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was kind of interesting because it showed, even though she was a captive, she knew she was safer with them.
Yeah.
And it's just little stuff like that that lets you know how desperate the situation is. And then it's during that time that they are all conversing on him, that the predator manages to get in there, grab Jesse Ventura's body, and get out. He hauled that huge guy out of there with 5 other guys. Well, no, it'd still be 6 because Carl Weathers. He gets them out of there that quietly and doesn't mess with them. Like, he wants to take his time picking them off.
Yeah, he hauled Jesse Ventura away faster than Hulk Hogan could pin him and say 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
What you gonna do, brother?
So this movie has several notable lines. You mentioned one earlier, but I ain't got time to bleed, of course.
And you mentioned one earlier.
I did.
Stick around.
Oh, stick it around, yeah. Anytime. That was anytime.
Yeah.
And then get to the chopper.
That's got to be the most famous one.
But one of the ones I think I like the best is, if it bleeds, we can kill it. That was Arnold's line. Oh my goodness. Anyway.
Yeah. Again, it was a masterful use of as little talking as possible between these guys. I don't know. I know Carl Weathers. He was a pretty well-known actor at the time. He had some chops in the acting realm. I don't know about a whole lot of the other guys. I think Jesse Ventura probably could have used more lines or done well with more lines because he was such a talker in the pro wrestling world. Whereas Arnold and maybe some of these other guys, maybe just they're...
Was he already wrestling at that point?
Oh, Ventura had been wrestling, yeah, from back in the 1970s.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe that was just the character they wanted to be, the more silent, tough guy, says very little.
Well, yeah, and not to
of course,
mention...
Billy says the least, I think.
Yeah.
The Indian. He says the absolute least.
Another, but another thing, too, though, is this is Jesse's first movie, and no matter how good of a talker he is, he's not the star.
Yeah.
So it would be wrong in that respect to take away from two guys like Arnold and Carl Weathers and give lines to Jesse Ventura.
Yeah. So, kind of jumping a little bit, but still in the realm of Predator. Do you remember in AVP where they basically say that the predators come every 100 years to do this hunt? There's even a deleted scene in AVP, because I think the movie came out in 2007. They show 1907 in an alternate opening that the Predator came to this Antarctic post and did his thing, and then they jump 100 years later. Do you remember that?
Not really.
Okay, well, basically they say how they come every 100 years. Well, I'm now seeing, or assuming at least, they got that from this movie, because this movie says when Anna, the woman, is telling about like the legend, that there's been a legend of, something, and how they found people skinned like that, they said they noticed that it's every 100 years. There's legends of, people ended up dead and they're skinned alive and various things like that. And I never noticed that before until this viewing.
Yeah, I remember that part of the movie, and I thought that was a really cool thing too, as if there was already a mythology in that realm. And if you think about it, it's kind of realistic because a lot of our more indigenous or less, modern societies, they're not all savages, but just people who aren't in as a developed society.
Tribal people,
yeah, exactly, tribal people. They have those myths, those legends that that they've told throughout their history and have just permeated their culture to where everybody's heard of the whatever it is, the boogeyman or the chupacabra or whatever.
Yeah.
That was just my thought about that.
Right. So I want to talk about the honor system of the Predator. They cover a little more in the sequel and a little bit in AVP, but it kind of reminds me of the Cleons, but a little different. They kind of touch that if you're unarmed, he ain't gonna do nothing because he needs that challenge. He wants that challenge. And it also seems, again, not so much in this movie, but they do hint at is like if you don't seem like you're capable, he doesn't bother.
I think that's the key right there is capable.
Yeah, maybe
because
maybe capable more than honorable.
No, I think that there is an honor to that, but you got to keep in mind a little female character like the one that was in the movie is physically not a threat to the Predator in any way.
Yeah.
Whereas Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, without any guns or ammo or knives or anything on him, is still a warrior. A creature himself.
Yeah.
And I think maybe even just that, that about him, the Predator could go after him.
Well, okay. I thought it was really cool. Toward when Arnold sets up all his traps, when he's the lone guy, he sets up all these traps, and it finally gets to the point where it's a face-off, and Arnold's completely pinned down, and he could totally kill him. They show he takes off the gun, the shoulder-mounted gun. I can't remember if he takes off his claws, but he also is giving Schwarzenegger a minute. Like, he actually turns his back to him, and he removes the mask. And I thought that was pretty interesting because it kind of showed me that this guy, that he saw this guy as a admirable opponent, a worthy foe, and was going to give him that chance to fight literally mano a mano. Like, I don't think at that point he uses any weapons. I think it's just literally hands. He takes all his extra gear off.
Yeah, it's really cool too, and in some ways, not just giving Arnold's character a chance to go mano a mano, but also in some ways, I almost think it's a real big show of respect. Like, up to this point, he has pretty well demolished in fair, quick fashion every other member of Arnold's team.
Some of them were too quick.
They were too quick.
Like when I thought for sure, not to kind of jump back, but like when he literally shoots Mac in the head, I thought like, wow, really? And I'm trying to remember the guy's name, the guy that got hit with the log.
Yeah.
And like literally he just like gets him right out of there. I thought, you wanted a big fight. He kind of picks them off very quickly. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, here they are, the best of the best, as far as the warriors, so to speak, of our culture. And here he goes through them like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah. And
then finally, there's one remaining, and it's Dutch, and he is able to outlast him, into the night and through into the late hours of the night. And it's just been a slugfest, really, between these two, not just physically, but even mentally. It's been a battle of the minds, with all the booby traps and the stalking. Arnold was stalking the Predator was stalking Arnold, it was really cool how that all worked out. And so I think that by the time, the Predator's removing that mask and all that other stuff, in some ways I think that was a show of respect. Like, you know what? You have, not only have you been a worthy adversary, and you deserve to fight me mano a mano, but you also deserve to see my ugly mug, because very few people
Have
live
lived,
to see this.
Yeah, again, not to keep mentioning Predator 2, but they did show that a lot more. They developed that aspect to them more. Like, for instance, at the end, when Danny Glover gets to the end, I think he actually kills the Predator, then all the other Predators surround him. They just take their guy away, and the king, or the commander of that unit, he gives Danny Glover an antique gun. It was from 1775 or something, as a because he knew that basically even to him this is like a trophy.
A trophy of war.
Yeah, they take trophies, and I just thought it was cool how he gave it back. Again, they show that in this, but not quite as developed as they later did in the other movies.
Yeah, I don't recall anything being like a trophy of war, so to speak, for Arnold. Except for maybe just that one glimpse, here I am,
Yeah.
Here's my ugly mug, for you to feast your eyes on before I finally kill you,
Yeah. Now, you mentioned about mind games or something, or you just talking about that?
Yeah.
You said something about that, and I was going to say it was interesting how they show Mac especially, but I think even Billy and some of the others, they're getting so spooked and so going insane, they... by being hunted and trying to get him, it's like they're kind of losing it. Where he's talking to himself, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I was thinking about that too when I was watching it, and so I sort of see it like this. Some of that is, that smack talk sort of stuff. I'm going to get you, blah, 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 blah.
But yeah,
but at the same time,
he seemed frantic and panicked and,
You think about these guys, they have already dealt with over, however many years they've been working as military guys. I don't know if they started out as a group together or if they formed their group maybe after their terms of service with the actual military was over. But man, these guys, they have fought and taken on the baddest of the bad as far as men are concerned.
So are they not in the military no more? Were they more like...
I sort of get the idea that they were maybe mercenaries.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
That's just... I can't say that
I
for
guess
sure.
You're right, because they got to choose to accept that job. I never thought of that. Yeah, I guess they were more mercenaries.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, but back to what I was saying, they've seen all of the horrible things that men do to one another. Mm-hmm. They've probably maybe been in some of those situations and had to get out of, torture chambers or whatever the case may be. And now here they are coming up against something that even they have never experienced before.
Yeah.
Now, even the toughest, most hardened men of war, people who have been in Vietnam and all that, they come back with, PTSD and other various psychological conditions because of the things that they've seen.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden these guys are seeing something that they've never even been able to deal with.
Yeah, like Billy, he seems like the toughest guy to me of them all. He's the silent one. He's the one that will stand up and walk out in the middle where he could easily be picked off. He has no fear, and then the point where he says he's scared, it lets you know these guys are in serious trouble if you didn't know it already. That really shows it to me.
That was actually kind of a disappointment for me, where the fact that Billy maybe died too quickly. Of all the guys, I thought that their death was just far too quick. I thought maybe it was Billy that was the one.
Yeah, they don't show it. You just hear him. And I wonder if that was meant to be... Well, one, obviously, you didn't... For them, they couldn't show it because then that would show too much of the Predator when they were still keeping him a mystery somewhat. And I think maybe by the fact that he was such a tough guy that you just see that he got killed that quickly is, again, kind of building up how dangerous he is, the Predator.
I almost wonder if maybe they couldn't have done something where it was in a very shadowy area, or where it was very dark, and so you could see something was going on between the two of them. Something where they wouldn't necessarily have to give the predator away earlier than what they wanted, but at the same time, maybe to give Billy's character the proper farewell, so to speak.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess they could have, but I don't know.
You know what? Real quick, something we haven't touched on at all in this, and or if we did, it was only just very briefly, is the absolutely magnificent job they did in putting together the Predator look, the costume. It was absolutely phenomenal, and if I'm not mistaken, that's the creation of the great Stan Winston.
Yes, I heard and I guess this should have been trivia, to do mandibles, that was a suggestion of James Cameron, I believe. And I know the original look was a little more of a long neck, it had one eye, and they said it had a little more of a dog-like face to it. It just wasn't a good look, I guess. You can actually see test footage that kind of gives you a rough idea of what it would look like, because I guess for the camouflage scenes, the suit is red. So somehow after they film it, to add that effect in that space, so you get to see what the creature would have looked like with the outline of red. It's not detailed or anything, but I think they do show concept art on the DVD that shows you what it was going to look like. It's a much better look at what they did.
One of the things that I was reading was that the original special effects company it was picked by the studio, and that was for the purpose of saving money. They're always going to try to save money. And it said that this other studio's Predator looked like someone in a lizard suit with the head of a duck.
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. That's pretty bad.
Now, I heard, too, that the actual body, the scaling and all that on the Predator, that it was inspired by nature. In particular, the scales on a certain kind of fish, I believe, and also something to do with the texture being inspired somewhat from a locust, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
And one more thing I thought was pretty cool. They said that one of the special effects guys, all those little intricate designs and carvings in his skin, that one of these special effects guys actually carved his name in the Predator's body. So this guy's signature is basically somewhere on the Predator's body.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to give a big shout out to all those guys who did that kind of special effects work, the makeup, the art, everything to do with the putting the Predator himself together.
Yeah.
That was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I guess was it Kevin Peter Hall? Oh, I already forgot his name.
Yeah.
The Predator. He had an extremely hard time seeing in it, and apparently at one point he did accidentally hit Arnold because he just
I heard that not only did he have a hard time seeing in it, he had a hard time moving around. And another thing, too, was because he couldn't hardly see anything at all, they wound up having to rehearse everything in their fight scene and then going through it, and him still not being able to see any of it, but he was at that point going off of memory of what he was doing. Yeah. Which is absolutely insane if you think about that. Just the amount of talent that required on his part.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about was the music. Now, I don't think it's one of the best scores, but I do think it does a good job of building suspense. The dun 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 dun. Like just the slow build. I might cut this out.
Yeah.
I just think it was pretty cool. Again, it's not like to me ranks as one of the best music scores of film, but I think it works for this. Again, just building that mystery, building that suspense that something is coming. This is so easy. Okay.
Yeah, the music was great. As far as what it needed to be. And like I said, this is one of those aspects of the movie where it didn't necessarily have to be the most, it didn't necessarily have to be the greatest, but it was what it needed to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things about this movie is it's not like a lot of other movies from that period where it was to the extreme on everything. Mm-hmm. It was actually quite minimalistic in a sense, and with being so, they did what they did very well and almost in every aspect. I can't think of anywhere where it didn't seem like they did it well.
Yeah, I guess now that I think about it, it seems there are a lot of spots in the movie where there are no music. They just kind of go off what's happening, but they do that kind of, I don't know if that's like a drum, some kind of tribal drum, like when Anna sees the green blood on the leaf, little stuff like that. But I guess there are a lot of scenes where there's not a lot of music happening all the time.
And there doesn't need to be. The scenes themselves, they're just so engaging. You don't have to. It actually goes to prove, what we say so often between ourselves off the air, that movies sometimes do too much these days. Mm-hmm. And in that, and this is a great example in this film where they don't overkill on everything, and it still is a fantastic movie. Mm-hmm. It's very impressive, very well done. I don't even know how to describe it properly, except it's a really good, minimalistic sci-fi action horror flick.
Yeah, I thought I was reading that it didn't do crazy good back then, but it kind of slowly built its fan base. But I know it got a lot of rip-offs, like people trying to cash in on this idea.
Well, yeah, I mean they had AVP and the sequels too.
Right, but I'm saying like other movies where a lone alien warrior versus a lone, guy doing their thing. There were other like wannabes, like around the time.
I don't recall them.
No, because they weren't big. They didn't do well.
They're probably in somebody's collection of favorite B movies of all time or C movies.
Right. So, Schwarzenegger figures out that it wouldn't kill if someone didn't have a weapon or wasn't a formidable challenge. He even says, I think the guy drops the weapon. The guy that got hurt, he drops the weapon. She goes to pick it up, and he says, "Leave it. You're no sport without it." However, the part where the Predator finally picks off that guy, and she goes to pick up the gun, he kicks it out of her hand and then turns around and starts shooting. Now, I was thinking about this. At that point, it seemed like he took too much, like he shouldn't have done that. He took too much time to kick it out of her hand when he could have got killed and then turn around and shoot. And I feel like two guns are better than one, right? If this thing's going to kill us anyway, he doesn't know necessarily. Like, what if at the very end, after it kills anybody, it kills her anyway? Then it goes and kills the less challenging people. He just goes in an order. But I just thought that was kind of silly. They had him kick the gun out of her hand, then swing around and try to shoot it instead of just let her pick it up and let's both try to shoot it. I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird.
I think he just knew. I think he just had that deep down gut instinct that once she put her hand on a gun or used it in a threatening fashion.
No, I get it. It's just
that her life was at that point never going to be spared by the Predator.
And why did he have such a? I mean, they just met. Like it doesn't seem like he had kind of a. He was looking after her more. Like you think they'd known each other forever, or they had a special relationship or something. Just I don't know. I just kind of wonder why he cared enough to even try to spare her.
Maybe it was just, he's not a guy. They don't go after civilians, and this is a civilian life. It's not an enemy. It's not somebody. But
he was also going to leave her. Remember, originally Carl Weathers says, I'm going to take her back. She probably knows some stuff or whatever, and he goes, leave her. She'll give away our position the first chance she gets. And then he's like, well, fine. She's your baggage. If you fall behind, you have to deal with her. So it seems like he was pretty much going to leave her there to whatever happens.
But now they're in this situation with the Predator that's wholly different. It's a game changer. When it was, you notice before the Predator shows up on her radar, her whole focus is getting away and doing exactly what Arnold said she was going to do, give away their position.
Right.
But once the Predator shows up on the scene, it's like automatically she knows, that this is this is the worst nightmare come true. This is something totally other.
Yeah.
And she's obviously in complete awe and fear of it from the moment she lays eyes on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was, at that point, instead of worrying about what she was doing, I would just think, this guy, he literally was holding the guy, and the guy that he was holding got killed. And he takes the time to kick the gun out of her hand and then turn around, and I just thought, just fire and let her fire too, and maybe you guys might hit this thing. That was just my thought. Another thing, the Predator's vision. I understand it works on body heat, specifically in this movie. I know in the other movie they gave it that he has the ability to see ultraviolet as well. But in this movie they just show pretty much the infrared. But I thought for sure there were some times where he was so close to like Dutch when he was covering the mud. You'd think he would have, at least not normal hearing, maybe above average hearing, or maybe his mask or his helmet or something gave him a little better hearing even than that. And it just amazed me that he wouldn't hear his breathing, his heartbeat, stuff like that, that when he's holding on to that tree camouflaged and the Predator's crawling down like right beside him, it just kind of does amaze me a little bit that he wouldn't have been able to hear him and pick up on that.
Well, it just might have been one of those things where this creature, whatever the Predator is, which I'm sure they further developed that idea later on, but in this movie it ends with you still really not knowing very much about the Predator.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have the feeling that maybe it's just the type of thing where this Predator, not just this one, but their species, they don't have in hand. That's just not something that they have. I mean, you think of a snake. A snake doesn't hear you as much as he feels you through the vibrations. So, but who knows how that creature's senses work.
He's stronger than us. I just figured maybe, again, even if he doesn't have above human advanced, I can't even talk, superior human hearing, I just thought if he at the least has can hear as well as us, I thought maybe he might be able to pick up on something. But if not that, maybe his gear that he wears might help him out. It's not a big deal because I know really why that's not how the script goes. If he found him out right then and there, the whole trap that Dutch set, that whole story, that whole segment wouldn't make sense, or it wouldn't be able to work. So I get really why they did it, but anyway.
So, as we're coming down here, we need to talk about the ending, obviously. And, the creature is basically, it's realized that it has no other choice but to end this one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if maybe it was pride. Maybe the creature just couldn't allow itself to be actually killed.
Yeah.
Maybe it was something to do with their understanding of honor, that it would be a dishonorable way to die. That it's a more honorable way to blow itself up. Yeah. But at the end of this movie, Arnold knows he's won, but then all of a sudden it's like he realizes this thing's not done yet. He's not going to die without taking me with him if he can try.
See, and that's another reason why I don't understand why Arnold, remember he's holding the big rock, why he wouldn't have just smashed him in. Because I figure he killed all your men. He practically killed you. I would have done it. That was even before he knew that he was going to set off a bomb on his arm. I think he should have just done it. Again, I understand it wouldn't be the way the movie ends. You wouldn't have the grand ending, but I just think he should have done it. I think if this was real, those guys, the way they were so tight-knit, if all your men got killed and you almost died from this thing, I would think you would just do it.
But that's, Arnold began to see this creature and see himself in the way this creature saw him and his men. There was no personal vendetta. There was nothing malicious. This creature didn't hate Arnold. This was purely sport. This was purely for the thrill of the hunt.
Right, from his point of view, but I'm saying from Arnold's point of view.
I think Arnold began to see things from his point of view. and began to understand this code, and sort of start to see this honor and what he's doing is not, just wanton, execution and murder. He began to see things from the Predator's eyes as much as he possibly could.
Well, here's the thing. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, there was no bomb that it could detonate. What was he going to do? He was basically just going to leave it there and try to walk somewhere and find a village or somehow to get a helicopter to get out of there. Like, well, he was just going to leave him there. I mean, for all he knows, what if this thing was going to survive and just start hunting him again, or get him, when he's walking away? Like, I don't know.
Maybe he was planning on sending up smoke signals. I don't know what the plan was. He
right,
probably
but I'm saying,
didn't
but
even
turning
know.
his back on, if he, again, imagining the bomb thing wasn't there. If he was going to be like, oh, you're not worth it, he throws the rock down and then just walk away from him. Like, okay, I'm getting out of here. For all he knew, what if the Predator could push that, what was it, a log or something that was on him, push it off and get him again and just start this whole thing over again?
Yeah, but he seemed to have a pretty good idea that the Predator was on his, dying moments, or it seemed anyway. And he probably was. I don't think he would have committed suicide if he wasn't. Not saying that Arnold would have realized exactly how dire his situation was. But I can totally see what you're saying. And it would be the most human thing to do, just to bash his skull in. Absolutely.
I'm not even, maybe this makes me sound like a barbarian, I'm not even saying it as a put it out of its misery thing. I would think to ensure, A, that this thing doesn't come after me again, and also, you killed all my guys in the worst way, and skinned them, and kept their skulls, and all these terrible things. No, I'm going to hit you in the head with this rock. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that makes the most sense. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Again, it's a movie, but anyway.
So then, the movie ends with Arnold getting the heck out of Dodge when he realizes...
How in the world could he survive that? Do you remember... they don't say it in this movie, but the next movie they say that basically the remote bomb has so much power it could... was it 10 city blocks or something that of rainforest that it destroyed? I don't know how he technically would have survived that by... I think he jumped in water, but I don't know. Anyway, again, it's a movie. I guess you can't nitpick too much, but I gotta nitpick a little.
Right. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's...
But he runs as he realizes there's getting ready to be an explosion.
Yeah.
And so the next thing you really have happen is he's getting the helicopter and flying away as the movie ends. And you can just see on his face that look, of complete exhaustion. Obviously he's mourning the loss of his beloved brothers in combat and old friends. Yeah. And at the same time, he is, trying to comprehend in his mind exactly what just took place.
Yeah.
And realistically, so is the viewer, because this is this is our first encounter with this creature known as the Predator. Yeah. And obviously, he's a creature that's stuck in the minds of many fans, and they made sequels. I mean, it's been a big moneymaker.
I think Predator 2 didn't come out until 92. I could be wrong on that.
I think 91 or 92.
Okay. I know for whatever reason they set it in 96, so that was like future at the time. I don't know why they chose to do that, but anyway. Well, I think we dove pretty deep there, I think.
Deep, man.
Deep.
Far out.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me come and hang out.
Thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here. I enjoyed the conversation.
Isn't there an email address if somebody wants to get a hold of the show?
There is. They can get us at escapepodcast1616@gmail.com. And we do have a Facebook. I never know how to say this. Do you say facebook.com/whatever?
Yep, that's what you say.
Facebook.com/whatever. That's Escape Podcast 16. That's our Facebook.
Well, it's been real. It's been fun, and hopefully I'll be able to come back and do another one of these with you sometime.
Yes.
If you'll ever let me back in the escape pod.
I will. How'd you get in this thing? There's some oxygen out there.
It just asked me for my name, and I said Dave.
How were you out there? What were you in? You can survive in the vacuum of space?
It was complicated.
So, when our ship blew up, like, how'd you stow away? What happened? It's a miracle.
It was. That's the best explanation. Yeah. Miracle.
Okay. All right. Miracle John. All right. Well,
Johnny Miracle.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good day, and we will see you next time.
Good night.